Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something we like to call the transition arc. Look, whether you're staring down a sudden career change, looking to upskill for our increasingly digital world, or you're just trying to make sense of the massive shifts coming to the UK's social safety net, you really need a clear roadmap. So we're going to demystify the UK's economic and employment transition systems for you. Think of this as your empowering guide to figuring out exactly where you stand and what tools are out there to help you build a more resilient future. Let's get right into it.
Here's how we are breaking it down today. 1. Safety nets, UK benefit reforms. 2. Disruption, navigating redundancy. 3. Disruption, calculating statutory pay. And 4. Growth, free skills boot camps.
All right, Section 1, Safety Nets and the upcoming UK benefit changes.
So this isn't some overnight flip of a switch shift. It's really a staggered multi-year rollout. Starting in April 2026, we'll see immediate adjustments to universal credit, specifically introducing severe conditions criteria to the new health element. Then moving through 2026 and 2027, extra childcare help and mobility VAT changes will take effect. By April 2027, there's a proposed removal of the health element for under 22s. And finally, in a pretty massive overhaul by April 2028, the work capability assessment is proposed to be scrapped entirely.
Now, behind all these abstract dates are real people. Families, especially those with disabled children, really need to prepare for how these shifts will hit their daily lives and their household budgets. For instance, charities like Contact have pointed out how changes to things like carers' allowance earnings limits, along with scrapping the two-child limit, are going to fundamentally alter the monthly math for countless households. It's a sobering reminder that these policies don't just live on paper, they dictate the financial reality for our communities.
And that brings us to one of the most talked about policy shifts. Right now, under universal credit, you generally can't receive the main child element for a third or subsequent child born after April 2017. But starting in April 2026, this two-child limit will be completely removed. That means parents can claim that main element for each child, regardless of what year they were born. But, and this is a big but, the overall benefit cap is not being removed, so larger families might still hit that overarching ceiling.
Looking way ahead to 2028, the system is proposing a brand new concept altogether: unemployment insurance. This single benefit is going to merge and replace the current job seekers allowance and employment and support allowance. But here's the really surprising shift. For the first time ever, this safety net will actually be available to self-employed claimants. So, if you run your own business, your personal safety net is about to change in a big way.
Moving right along to Section 2, Disruption, understanding your redundancy rights.
If you're facing job loss, the absolute most immediate question is, who actually qualifies for statutory redundancy pay? Because, not everyone who loses their job gets a payout, and knowing exactly where you stand on day one is completely critical for planning your next moves.
Well, it comes down to meeting some very specific legal criteria. First, your role must actually be made redundant. Second, you have to have 2 or more years of continuous employment with that employer. And third, you must hold the legal status of an employee. It's a very strict definition. So unfortunately, if you're an agency worker, a casual worker, or you're on a 0-hours contract, you just don't qualify for statutory redundancy pay.
Now here's how the math works. Your statutory payout is strictly tied to your age bracket. The system actually weighs your years of service differently depending on how old you were when you worked them. So if you're under 22, you get half a week's pay for each full year. From 22 to 40, you get 1 full week's pay per year. But the moment you hit 41, your multiplier jumps up to 1.5 weeks' pay for each full year worked from that age onward. And don't worry about crunching the numbers yourself. Your employer is legally required to tell you in writing exactly how they work this out. While those multipliers are helpful to know, you absolutely have to be aware of the hard caps. £751. That is the absolute maximum weekly amount that can be used to calculate your statutory redundancy pay. Even if your actual gross weekly wage is £1,000 or way more, the legal formula just stops at £751. Now, sure, your employer might offer an enhanced contractual redundancy package that pays out more, but legally speaking, this is the statutory ceiling. And that brings us to another hard ceiling, £22,530. This is the maximum total statutory redundancy pay anyone can possibly receive. You might be wondering why. Well, it's because the legal calculation caps out at 20 years of continuous employment. So even if you've been incredibly loyal and stayed with the same company for 25 or 30 years, those extra decades just won't factor into your statutory payout.
Look, navigating redundancy is incredibly stressful. But it doesn't have to be a completely cold corporate process. Employers can and should actively ease this transition. They can step up by considering staff for internal transfers or by directly contacting jobs and benefits offices for local vacancies. Even offering practical guidance on CVs and interview techniques goes a long way. A genuinely supportive exit can fundamentally change a person's ability to bounce back.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 3 growth and look at free government skills boot camps.
If you're aiming to upskill or totally switch industries, you've got to look into the National Career Service Skills Boot Camps. These are highly practical, entirely free, and really flexible. They last up to 16 weeks, and here is the absolute best part. Upon successful completion, you are guaranteed an interview with a local employer. It literally fast-tracks you straight out of the classroom and in front of hiring managers.
And these aren't just generic filler courses. They are highly targeted toward booming industries that have real, urgent skill shortages. Whether you want to jump into the digital sector with AI data analysis or software development, or you'd prefer a more hands-on route like heat pump installation or CAD and construction, there is a specialized, fully funded course waiting for you. There are also robust offerings in care services, engineering, and hospitality. Plus, they're available online, in person, or through blended learning, so they actually fit around your life.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember something. Yes, the economy is always going to face disruptions, but the tools to navigate those bumps, they're already right here at your disposal. From understanding how your benefits are evolving to utilizing free, high-level retraining, your map is ready. Looking past all the uncertainty of today's economy, I want to leave you with this one thought. What is the very first new skill you're going to learn to future-proof your tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep learning.